God. I don't want to. It's a blessing that I can't remember. Please don't make me.
I'm not going to sugarcoat this opening. This is one of the most frustrating cases I've talked about. Hello, true crimeers. This is the case of Stephanie Crowe. Viewer discretion is advised. Stephanie Crowe was born on April 12th, 1985 in Escondido, California, which is actually kind of crazy to me because I was born on March 29th, 1985 in Escondido, California. Stephanie was one of 3 children. She had a sister and a brother. Stephanie was described as a young girl who was full of life. From the moment she woke up in the morning to the moment she went to bed at night, she always kept herself just super busy doing things. Her mom said even at such a young age, Stephanie put like 100% into everything she did. But she was also still a kid, and she loved the Spice Girls. Her favorite movie at the time was Titanic. She sang in the church choir. She was a volunteer at the Escondido Library. She got along with her siblings. I mean, there were always going to be like sibling fights. But, I mean, for the most part, they got along really well. The parents were very loving. They did not grow up in a troubled home. Everything was basically normal. It was just your normal kind of all-American family until the day that it stopped being normal. On the night of January 20th, 1998, Stephanie and her older brother Michael were sharing the same pillow, lying on the floor, watching TV. They were laughing together. They were in good spirits. It was clear they loved each other. A couple hours after this, the family kind of all goes to their rooms and they all go to bed for the evening. Little did they know that a few hours later, their lives would be changed forever. Stephanie's grandmother also lived in the house with them, and it was now the early morning hours of January 21st, 1998. Her grandmother would get up, just to get the morning going. And as she walked past Stephanie Crowe's bedroom, she heard Stephanie's alarm going off. And then, it was still dark, so it was kind of hard to see everything. But as she flicked on a light, she saw something that, no grandparent, no parent, no sibling should ever have to see. Stephanie was lying on the floor just in front of her bedroom door, so she was still in the bedroom. And she was just covered in blood. There was blood everywhere. The grandma screams, and Stephanie's mom and dad come out, and they all let out these blood-curdling screams, and her father calls 911.
My daughter!
What's the problem?
She's laid on the floor. She's not breathing. There's blood all over the place. Please, oh my God, help her. My daughter's dead.
When police arrive, they get into the bedroom, and there's not only blood around Stephanie, there's blood everywhere. There is blood soaked into the carpet of her floor of the bedroom. There's blood on her bed. There is blood spatter on the walls. And it looked like as if someone had been stabbing her, just based on the cast-offs and the way it looked like someone stabbed and then repeatedly stabbed. And later the coroner would determine that Stephanie Crowe, who was 12 years old at the time, was stabbed 8 times. Very deep cuts. I guess they found hair in her hand, but they've never actually been able to identify whose hair that is, I believe, even to this very day. So as police are looking around the house, they check every door, every window. There is absolutely no signs of forced entry. They go door to door. They go and they see that there's been no doors kicked in. There's no scrape marks on any of the door handles or the locks. They go to all of the windows, same thing. The screens are still intact. There's no broken glass. There's no signs that the windows had even been opened. And when they ask the parents, they say, were any of the doors unlocked to your knowledge? Stephanie's father would say that, I guess, Sometimes they would forget to lock the laundry room door, which I guess would lead to the outside, but he says that this particular evening the door was locked. I guess they confirmed it. But then he tells police that there's a sliding glass window into their bedroom, the parents' bedroom, and that sliding glass door is almost never locked, and it wasn't locked the evening Stephanie was stabbed. However, the blinds were confirmed to be completely closed. They're vertical blinds, the old school, like slatted, blinds. And the parents said if someone had come into the bedroom through this unlocked door, they would have rattled the blinds. They're not super loud, but you probably would have heard something, right? If someone's opening the door and going through these. And also, if someone had stabbed Stephanie, there's going to be blood all over this person, all over their hands, all over their clothing. And there was no blood anywhere on the blinds, on the window, on anywhere at all. And judging by how everything was still locked, this would have been the only way they could have possibly left. So that was kind of like okay, maybe the killer cleaned themselves up in a sink, their hands and whatnot before. The coroner would determine that Stephanie Crowe was killed sometime between 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. The night of January 20th, which honestly isn't even that late. It was a Saturday night, so it's kind of weird that people were already in a deep enough sleep at that time to not hear anything, because that's the other thing. No one heard a thing. No one in that house. There are 5 other people other than Stephanie in that house. Not one of them said they heard a peep. No sounds of rustling of windows opening, no screams, no thumps, because Stephanie, she was sound asleep on her bed, but then when she was found on the ground, so there was a struggle that took place. They believe that Stephanie had gotten up and then fell to the ground in front of her door where she died. Could have been a fairly loud sound. No one heard anything. The other thing is they have a dog, and a dog that would bark at literally anyone that dog didn't know coming into the house. Typically, you can't sit here and say for absolute certainty that the dog even noticed the intruder. It's very possible that the dog just wasn't around and didn't hear anything, even though an intruder still could have come into the home. But again, the dog didn't bark, didn't make any noises, no indication to anyone that anyone was in that house that night, other than the 6 total people who lived there. The police, of course, need to look at the people in the house first. So they bring in the mom and the dad. Both of them are questioned pretty thoroughly. They do pay more attention to Stephanie's dad. I think it's just, just given the fact that, it's a male, right? Typically are the people who do this. The strength that would have been used to stab Stephanie, it was pretty strong. Like the cuts were deep. But anyone in some kind of rage could probably do that. They grilled both parents, but they determined that both parents likely weren't the suspects. Both of them and the grandma were clearly grieving, and also Stephanie's sister clearly grieving. It did not appear to be fake to them. It looked like they were just genuinely destroyed by all of this. Everyone grieves differently. That needs to be said from the get-go. And this isn't a new thing. I mean, since the beginning of human existence, everyone grieves differently. Everyone has their own way. You cannot look at a person and say, well, you're not grieving the way you should be, therefore you're probably guilty. That's what police did, though, when it came to Stephanie's 14-year-old brother, Michael Crowe. He appeared to be very, just sort of monotone, wasn't really shedding a lot of tears, he just wasn't showing a lot of emotion. And so to police, that looked like, oh, okay, your sister was just brutally murdered, why aren't you crying about it? Who knows? Maybe shock, that's a thing too. So Michael initially told police, because each person in that house gave their accounts of that entire evening. Michael told police he was just joking with his sister the night before. They were laying on the pillow together, watching TV, laughing. They were having a good time. He loved his sister very much, despite, occasionally getting into fights like every sibling does. But he said later that morning, sometime around 4:30 in the morning, because he was battling the flu, or he had been recovering from the flu, So he said he got up around 4 to 4:30 in the morning to go get some Tylenol. He would have had to walk down the hallway, which would have been past Stephanie's bedroom. And then he walked into the kitchen where he knew the Tylenol was, where he got it, and he took it. And then he walked back down the hall. Now, at this point, Stephanie is likely already dead on the floor of her room right by her door. And police are wondering, well, why didn't you see her? Like, how did you not see your bloodied, murdered sister on the ground at all? You know, he was like, because it was 4 a.m, it was pitch dark in the house, there weren't any lights on, I was half asleep, I was recovering from the flu. You're not the most attentive in the world. I mean, it was a very dark hallway. He just didn't see it. I mean, even the next morning, the grandma had to flick the light switch on even to see the body was there. But this was enough for police. Police were like, we think we've got our guy. We think Michael Crowe killed his sister. And they just honed in on him. And this is where it gets incredibly frustrating. So the Escondido police are, at least back then, I can't say now, back then, Jesus Christ. They take the 2 children from the house and they put them into a children's shelter because they needed to be separated because of all the ongoing investigation and all that, because the parents were being questioned. And they bring in, Stephanie's sister. They talk to her for a little while. They interrogate her. But they say, okay, she didn't do it. She's like 9 or 10 years old. And so they basically say, all right, you're on the clear. And they put her back in the shelter. Here's the thing. Police do not tell the parents that they are going to be interrogating the 2 siblings. They don't tell them. And they're both under the age of 18. It's California law. You're required to get the parents' permission to interrogate the kids. And or if the child they can say, yes, I agree to this by doing the Miranda rights thing. But it doesn't sound like that happened. It just sounded like they told the children, your parents approve this, so we're going to do it. But again, they focused on Michael Crowe. It was him. He did this into their eyes. For what evidence, for what reason? I mean, just hours after the murder took place, they had no reason. They just used his state of mind and the fact that they are convinced he would have seen the body. That was it. There was no physical evidence at that point to connect him to anything. So now I'm going to show you just a series of clips from the multiple interrogations of Michael Crowe. What I want to say from the get-go, from the beginning of this, is the police would interrogate Michael for, 10, 12 hours straight. They were not feeding him. They were barely giving him anything to drink. They were not letting him sleep when he was exhausted. They were just depriving this 14-year-old child of literally everything. And they don't really ask him your typical questions like, what were your movements? What were you, they weren't like, their questions were more framed in suggestions, like almost telling him what they want him to say, kind of. And they don't really sugarcoat it. They basically tell him, we think you killed your sister. We know you killed your sister. With, at this point, no evidence. No evidence at all. We know you did it. So this first clip is basically Michael saying that he just feels like he's being treated as if he did kill her.
Do you act like there's a question?
I've told them before, I wouldn't mind.
What's the problem, Mike?
I spent all day away from my family. I couldn't see them. I feel like I'm being treated like I killed my sister. And I didn't, and it feels horrible.
Michael is repeatedly, over and over and over again, saying he did not kill his sister. He did not do it. He is very clear. Now, there are aspects of this interrogation that I can kind of like have parallels to the Brendan Dassey interrogation from the Stephen Avery, Teresa Halbach Making a Murderer case. Whereas like you have this young person being interrogated who's not totally understanding everything that's going on. But the big difference is like Brendan Dassey had a very known, very low IQ, was poorly educated. On the flip side, Michael Crowe appeared to be very, intelligent for his age. He seemed to be very poised. He seemed to be very aware of things, and he knew what police were doing. He knew police were basically telling him that he did this, but he was repeatedly denying it. I did not do this. I mean, for hours and hours and hours. At any rate, police then tell him, we're going to be doing a kind of like a form of a lie detector test on you. We're going to get this computer. It's called a voice stress analyzer. And so this is them explaining it.
I'm here to verify what you're saying. Okay? We're going to work through this together. Okay? Okay. I can tell you, this instrument here, okay, is what they call a computer voice stress analyzer. Now, you'll appreciate this, being into computers.
So then, one of the questions they asked him was, do you know who killed Stephanie? Police don't show him any reports or anything. They don't show him the analysis, but they tell him that on that question, the voice stress analyzer indicated he was lying. That when he said, no, I don't know who killed her. But they told him that he was lying about it. And so this was his response.
It's okay. It's okay to feel the way you feel.
All right, really?
Okay, but
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know why I'd say that. I swear to God, I don't know.
Now detectives are pressing him more. They're saying, we know you did this, and we know you want to tell us. We know you want to confess.
Looking at you right now, okay, and inside you're about ready to burst. We can't bring her back. She's gone. Okay? You're fighting it. You're
I don't know what to do anymore.
I understand.
Now I'm being told that I'm lying, and I
I'm
know
not
I'm not.
saying, Michael, I'm not saying that. Have you heard me say that? What if they come back and say to you, Michael, we have your hair?
Michael later is still saying, I didn't do this. However, if you're saying I did, I must have blacked out. I don't have any knowledge of it. Throughout the interrogation, they leave Michael kind of alone in this room, and this is one of the more heartbreaking, just brief moments where he is just completely crying. They're breaking him down mentally and physically again. They're not feeding him. They have not told his parents that they're questioning him. Even after they let him go back to the children's center, and then they bring him back the next day, they still don't tell the parents that they're interrogating him. But this kid is like swearing up and down he didn't do this, but now they're making him kind of think, maybe I did do this. They're telling me I did it, and now I just don't remember it, so I had to have blacked out, I guess.
Now what? I mean, what are you going to do at that point? I mean,
At that point,
hypothetically.
I would have to have completely blanked out and did it without knowing it. Because I don't know.
Okay. Hypothetically. Could that have happened?
No, not that I know of.
Not that you know of.
Like I said, I would have to be completely unaware of it.
Okay. Have you ever blacked out before?
No, never.
Okay, I believe you. I believe you.
If I knew who did it, you would know. Everyone would know right now.
Okay, why?
Because whoever did it, if I ever find out, I'll hate them forever. I loved her. I loved her deeply.
So then, police go to Michael, and they basically tell him, we found blood in your bedroom.
Very difficult. You need to stay with me, Michael. It's very difficult for the person who did it not to get blood on him.
Yeah.
Okay, and not to transfer that blood to other parts of the house.
Yeah.
We found blood in your room already.
God.
We use processes called.
Where'd you find it?
Pardon me?
Where'd you find the blood?
I'm sure you know.
What? God, I don't know. I didn't do it. I'll swear to that.
Does that mean you can't tell me about the knife?
What are we talking about?
Okay.
I don't know what we're talking about.
You're 14?
Yes.
You got your whole life ahead of you, don't you?
Yeah. God. Oh, God. God. Why?
You tell me.
Why are you doing this to me? If I did this, I don't remember it. I don't remember a thing.
And you know what? That's possible.
Here's the thing. They lied. There was no blood in Michael's bedroom. There was no blood on any of Michael's clothing. There was no blood on any clothing in the laundry room. There was no blood anywhere else in that house. Anywhere. Not a single drop of blood anywhere else. It needs to be said that it is legal for police to lie to suspects in an interrogation. This is not something that's abnormal. They do it all the time, and sometimes it works effectively. Sometimes it works, but for the wrong reason. Sometimes they get the wrong person to confess. Then detectives kind of say, well, we're here to help you, Michael. We're here for you.
You're a child. You're 14 years old. Nobody's going to hold you to the same standards that they would some criminal on the street. Okay? You're going to need some help through this.
And so I guess it's like by the second interrogation, after they have just broken him down unbelievably, barely feeding him, not letting him sleep much, they're beating him up mentally. He says, well, they ask him, how'd you do it? And he goes, well, I'm going to have to lie to you. I'll tell you, I guess, how I could have done it, but this is all going to be a lie.
God. It's blessing that I can't remember. Please don't make me.
You have my personal guarantee that the help you need to accept this is going to be forthcoming. That is what the system is geared for.
I want to go down that path.
No. Cut it out. Cut it out, Mike. Cut it out.
God.
The reason I'm sounding impatient, Mike, is the 11th hour is rapidly approaching. All this evidence is going to be in. Rush on some things that, quite frankly, is going to bury you, my friend. And you need to head that off at the pass. You need to take the step over here first, but hit with this avalanche.
I have this overwhelming feeling that I killed her, but
Okay,
For
let's
some
hear.
reason,
Let me hear about. Let me
I
hear
don't know
about
why I feel that way.
that. Let me hear about it.
But it won't, I'll lie. I'll have to make it
Tell
up.
us the story, Michael.
That night, I'm better. I couldn't take it anymore, okay? So, I got a knife, went to the room, and I stabbed her.
How many times did you stab her?
Tell me a lie 3 times.
Tell me what the truth is.
The only reason I'm trying to lie here is because you presented me with 2 paths. One, I am just deathly afraid of. I'd rather die than go to jail.
Okay. Where'd you get the knife?
I don't know what I did.
What did you do with the knife afterwards?
I don't know what I do with the knife.
Give me some of these details.
I don't know.
Not your hollow lying.
So when they go into like the whole, why would you do this, Michael? Michael finally kind of breaks down and kind of discusses some issues he had with his sister.
She made me feel ugly. She made me feel worthless. She was like a threat to me. Everything I did, she could match. That wasn't right. I was in my own world. I let my body take over. My body was doing some nightmare. I didn't, I only know I did it now because she's dead.
Now, the issues that Michael discusses, everyone pretty much believes is genuine, but it doesn't mean it's connecting him to the murder of Stephanie. So now that they have their confession, which Michael even stated, I'm lying about all of this, but I'm just telling you what you want me to tell you because that's the options you've given me. he's not stupid. He's responding intelligently, but he's also being told he did it as a 14-year-old child. So you have to be like, you have to understand he is still a kid, and it breaks him down. So then they tell Michael, why don't you do us a favor? We're going to give you a pad of paper here and a pen. I want you to write an apology letter to Stephanie. So write out this big old apology letter to her. Say all the things you wanted to say to her and apologize that you killed her. Write it out in this letter. Jesus Christ. So they leave him in the room alone with this pad of paper and a pen, and he writes out this long letter. And in that letter, he says things like, they are putting me through hell, and I guess I think that's what I deserve. He also writes, if I did do this, then I'm insane. He also writes, the only way that I know I did this is because they said I did this. And then he says something along the lines of, I want you to know that if I did do this, I wasn't myself when I did it. So even in this letter, where they're looking at the words and they take this as another confession, he's even suggesting that I didn't do this, but if I did, I have no recollection. One kind of bizarre clue they found in Stephanie's room, I guess written on her windowsill, were the words kill, kill. And they said it looked like kind of, childish handwriting. And so they kind of put that with like the letter he wrote, like, yep, signed, sealed, delivered. It's him. He did it. Boom, we got our guy. When they asked him, well, where's the knife? And he, I showed you, he said, I don't know where the knife is. So later on, he suggests, well, maybe he got the knife from a friend of his 15-year-old friend, Joshua Treadway. So then detectives bring Joshua Treadway in for questioning. And the reason why is because when they go to Joshua Treadway's house, because they're now trying to find this murder weapon. As they're searching his house, they hone in on Joshua's bedroom. They go to his bed, and they lift up the mattress, and lo and behold, underneath the mattress, they find a knife. So detectives bring him in for questioning. They once again lie. They tell Joshua that Michael said he helped him kill his sister. But Michael never said that. Michael only said that he only suggested, maybe I got the knife from Joshua. I don't know. Like one of those passive things. But he never said that Joshua was involved in anything, but police lied. So here's a clip of kind of a lot of the stuff they talked about with Joshua.
The evidence is going to screw you to the wall. What do I do with Josh? I charge Josh with the murder of 12-year-old Stephanie Crowe. That's the only option I have. Why? Josh had the murder weapon. Now, we've talked in depth with Michael. We've talked in depth with Aaron. Who's to say they're not blaming you for this whole thing?
That's what I'm afraid of.
Okay, wait, stop.
I knew that Michael was supposed to go in there and sort of take care of keeping Stephanie quiet. And Aaron was supposed to go in and take care of the business. It was going to happen, and I was going to dispose of the knife when it was done. Michael came back a little while after that, and he was rinsing the knife in the sink.
Joshua says, well, I was just the lookout, I guess. I was out there just to make sure no one else came in the house. But it was Michael inside and our friend Aaron Hauser. He was the one that was chosen to do the deed. So, 15-year-old Aaron Hauser, he was brought in by detectives. I don't have any clips of his interrogation, but he was extremely adamant. He goes, I don't know what they're talking about. I had no involvement in this. I did not kill Stephanie. I have no idea who did. Didn't do anything to do. I had nothing to do with this. But then police were like, okay, well, how would you have done it, hypothetically? What the fuck? So he just makes up a hypothetical story about, because based on the knowledge that the police have told him, he makes up a story. He says, I guess this is how he would have done it, because that's what they asked him. Again, he's a 15-year-old kid. They asked him to tell a hypothetical story, and so he obliged. But they took it as a confession. So all three boys were now charged with the murder of Stephanie Crowe. They had no physical evidence to place the other two boys, the friends, in that house. They had nothing. There was no indications that they were ever in that house. There was no blood evidence anywhere in Michael Crowe's bedroom. There was no blood evidence on his clothing, even washed clothing. They had no physical evidence. There was no cuts on his hand. When you stab someone 8 times, you're bound to slip and cut your hand, especially if it's bloody. There was nothing. There was no indications of any scratches on him. Nothing. When police would look at the knife that they found underneath Joshua's bed, they themselves even said, well, this couldn't have been the murder weapon because it wasn't long enough. The cuts in Stephanie were so deep that this knife could not have possibly done it. All 3 of these boys were brutally interrogated without the permission of any of their parents. They were really not given a Miranda reading. These police officers were, worst. These are the worst interrogators I've ever seen. And I hate the people who interrogated Brendan Dassey, but these guys are awful. Meanwhile, they're not actually investigating anything. They're just like, okay, Michael Crowe did it. We're not going to go out there and look at other possibilities. It's him. We're done. So whoever killed her is now just kind of out there roaming around, and every moment that goes by, they're not investigating him. They're getting away with it. Well, the boys finally catch a break. It's revealed that on the night Stephanie was murdered, there was a man, a vagrant, a homeless man, roaming around that neighborhood. Multiple confirmed sightings of this man roaming that neighborhood, who was peering into windows, who was potentially trying to break into homes. He was arrested the night that Stephanie was murdered. Not in the neighborhood, but he was arrested, I guess, like 400 or 500 yards away, they said. But there was no connection made, I guess. When he was arrested, they took his clothing because it looked like it had like stains and stuff on it. So I don't know why they took it, but they did. When the attorneys who were representing one of the 3 boys found out about this, they're like, whoa, this guy was in the neighborhood. This guy had these weird stains on his shirt, and you have that shirt. We want to run that for evidence. We want to test it. And so they take this red t-shirt that this man was wearing, and on that shirt, they noticed there were little spots kind of around the shirt. Spatter spots, as if someone had stabbed someone and gotten, and sprayed the blood on their shirt. They test those spots. It's confirmed to be human blood. Then they run those blood stains against Stephanie. 100% match. Stephanie Crowe's blood was on the shirt of this random vagrant homeless man. His name was Richard Tuitt. Prosecutors argued that the shirt was looked at the night he was arrested and said that there was no blood on the shirt then. But then I guess now there was. Seems a little fishy to me. But there's photos of the guy wearing the shirt, and when they zoomed in on him, you can still see the spots like on the guy's shirt. So now that they found Stephanie's blood on this man's shirt, finally the 3 boys are released. Charges are dropped. Not to mention, they also had gone to the state Supreme Court, who ruled that all 3 of those interrogations were done illegally. They were coerced confessions. They were allowed to be lied to. You are allowed to lie to those suspects, but they did not get parents' permission for every interrogation. They did not properly Mirandize the 3 boys. So anything those boys said could no longer be used because those things were gotten illegally. So Richard Tuitt went on trial in 2004 for the murder of Stephanie Crowe. He was found guilty, and he was sentenced to just 17 years in prison. At that point, the 3 teenagers, Michael, Joshua, and Aaron, were by the courts declared legally innocent, meaning they now know that none of those boys had anything to do with this murder. They were innocent, didn't have anything to do with it. In 2011, Richard Tuitt would go to the Supreme Court with regards to his conviction. Because there were issues in testimonies of witnesses who saw him in that neighborhood that night, and they cannot, this is insane to me, but they can't prove that the bloodstains were on the shirt the day he was arrested. They presented some situation in terms of cross-contamination that maybe Stephanie's blood had somehow gotten on this man's shirt while being looked at as evidence. So unbelievably, his conviction was overturned and he was given a second trial. Prosecutors presented that they had proof that Richard Tuitt was in that neighborhood within hundreds of yards of Stephanie's house that night. They had proof of it. He was being a peeping Tom, looking into windows, trying to break into homes. And again, they had the shirt with blood on it, and they said, how on God's green earth would Stephanie Crowe's blood be on this man's shirt if he didn't kill her? This whole idea of cross-contamination is insane because it's like random spots of blood. And the shirt was looked at finally, like tested, well after the murder. How on earth would there have been any fresh blood to have dripped onto this man's shirt? It doesn't make sense. But then the defense brought up a good point, that there was no physical evidence that Richard Tuitt was actually in the house. They had nothing to connect him to it. There was none of his DNA in the house, none of his DNA on Stephanie. The hair that was in her hand didn't belong to him, didn't belong to anyone that was potentially a suspect in this. There was no fingerprints, there was no anything. There was no physical evidence to put him in the house. And then on top of that, they confirmed all of the doors and the windows were locked except for that one sliding glass door in the parents' bedroom. But how would he have entered that bedroom and not disturb the blinds enough to wake them up? It's not impossible. He could have done it. They could have been heavy sleepers, and they just didn't notice. Why did the dog not bark? Because maybe the dog was somewhere else in the house and the guy was quiet enough where the dog didn't hear anything. It's possible. If it was him, how did he not leave any blood anywhere else in the house, especially on the blinds and the window? He could have cleaned his hands. He could have washed his hands. It's not impossible, but it's also not provable. And that's the problem, is nothing was proven that he was in that house. But then why was her blood on his shirt? How was her blood on his shirt? Could it have been cross-contaminated? I guess. It's possible. But that is the only evidence they had. And unbelievably, during his second trial, he was found not guilty. And he was released. He was put back out into the world. And now, to this very day, it's July of 2023, no one has been convicted of the murder of 12-year-old Stephanie Crowe. But here's what we know. Stephanie Crowe didn't do this to herself. Stephanie Crowe was stabbed 8 times in her own bedroom. There were 5 other people and a dog in that house. No one heard a single thing. The dog made no indications, no barking at some stranger in the house. There was only one unlocked door, a sliding glass door, that someone could have entered. And it's possible that someone could have entered and not disturbed anyone. But who was that person? To this day, it's not proven as to who it was. Could it have been an inside job? I guess. But there was also no proof anywhere else in the house. Anywhere. Nothing on clothing. Anything. That anyone in that house stabbed Stephanie. And what would be the motive for any of them? A sibling rivalry between her 14-year-old brother and her? How many kids across the entire country have sibling rivalries? Almost all of them who have, brothers and sisters. Most of them don't kill each other. It's possible, though. It is possible. But there's more physical proof to show that this Richard Tuitt guy killed her than there is physical proof that anyone in that house, including her older brother, did. The police coerced confessions out of 3 young boys, and during all of that, they weren't properly investigating this murder. They could have been out there doing more legwork, looking at more people, questioning more people in the neighborhood, looking for any enemies that Stephanie may have had. You don't know. I know she's 12, but you never know. They didn't investigate anything. They just honed in on this boy and then his 2 friends, and that was it. And so they just wasted time. And now it's like, who did it? Who killed Stephanie Crowe? Someone did. And whoever did it got away with it. If it wasn't Richard Tuitt, and it wasn't her brother, and if it wasn't any one of the brother's friends, that person never was looked at, and to this very day is walking around a free person. And that person is very likely still alive. This wasn't that long ago. Surely someone somewhere out there knows the truth. Someone knows who killed Stephanie Crowe. Perhaps that someone is you. If you have any information about the murder of 12-year-old Stephanie Crowe from Escondido, California, I would encourage you to contact the Escondido, California police. They are a much different group of people now. So hopefully they can be trusted with that information. Stephanie was just a 12-year-old girl who loved books, who did volunteer work at libraries. She loved the Spice Girls, the movie Titanic. She was just a kid. She was just a kid. And she was brutally stabbed 8 times by some stranger in the dark. And her family has still not gotten the justice they deserve. Hopefully one day, Stephanie will finally be able to rest in peace. By the way, the Crowe family and the other families of the other 2 boys sued the Escondido Police Department, and they all settled. I know that the Crowe family was awarded $7 million for all the crap they put that poor child through. So they were held accountable at the very least. But unfortunately, that's the end of this case. I wish I had the answers, but I hope you found it interesting. As usual, if you have tripped, fallen, and stumbled your way into this video, hello, I'm Mike. I tell true crime stories here on YouTube, of course. So please subscribe to me here and give this video a like. And I also tell true crime stories over on TikTok. The link to my TikTok is in the description below. I'm on Threads now too. It's in my link tree. I don't really know what I'm going to do with it, but I'm on it if you want to follow me there. If you have a case you want me to cover, please email me. The email is listed below. Just email me the name of the person, where it happened, when it happened, and then I will add it to my list eventually, I promise. I pick my cases at random. I can't tell you when I'll cover that case, but I will eventually. Next, if you want to support me in any way, we do sell merch, t-shirts, hoodies, a wine glass, stuff like that. It's in the link tree below. We do ship internationally, so that's there if you want. And then lastly, if you have Discord and you want to join my Discord server, it's also linked in the link tree. Please feel free to join it, but if you're under the age of 18, you will be kicked out. But that is it for this video, True Crime Rooney Dooney Ding Dong. So, until the next case... So goodbye, mother***ers. I'm sorry, that may have been a... that was my other side. Michelangelo. I apologize. F*** you! Sorry about him. He hasn't had his cheeseburger today, so bye.